I ask you to live without having food for a couple of days, will you be able to survive? Most definitely not, because food is something that we all require for our sustenance. And in fact, human lives or any kind of life cannot exist on this face of earth without food. That means that food is required for our sustenance. Now, if I ask you which your favorite food is, you will have a lot of options to choose from. Some of you will choose Indian platters, while others must be choosing Chinese platters. So you have different kinds of foods. Now, in today's world, we know which food item is poisonous and which one is edible. Now, when we get a plate full of different kinds of food, we take it for granted. We often do not give it a thought as in where these foods came from. Now, will you be able to answer if I ask you where these foods came from? How did humans start growing foods? Now, you will be surprised to know that before humans started the process of growing food, they initially relied upon hunting and gathering food. That is to say, we did not begin growing crops at the outset. Initially, we hunted animals. We gathered different kinds of food. Now, this series of lessons will be devoted to understanding how humans evolved from hunting to growing food. And to be specific, this lesson will be devoted to understanding the earliest stage of human civilization. So let us now embark on this journey and find out how we began as human beings. Now, the earliest stage when the humans lived is known as the Palaeolithic period. And this Palaeolithic period roughly spanned from 2 million years ago to 12,000 years ago. So this is the time span when the Palaeolithic period existed. Now, you must be wondering what this word Palaeolithic means. As in, why did the archaeologists attribute this term Palaeolithic to this period? Let us now try to find out answers to these questions. The word Palaeolithic has a Greek origin. So what does this word mean? Palaeolithic is made up of two Greek words, and those two Greek words are paleo and lithos. What do these words mean? Paleo means old and lithos means stone. So the word Palaeolithic means old stone. And for your reference, you should definitely know that the Palaeolithic period is also known as the Old Stone Age. Now, from this, you must be inferring that this was a time when human beings relied upon different kinds of things that were made of stone. So, during this Old Stone Age, people used to make stone tools. People used to use these stone tools for different kinds of purposes. Now, it's imperative on our part to find out more about the lives of those people who used to live in the Palaeolithic period. Now, before proceeding with this lesson and finding out more about the lives of the people who used to live thousands and millions of years ago in the Palaeolithic period, let me ask you a question. What is the Palaeolithic period also known as? Is it also known as the Old Stone Age, the Middle Stone Age, the New Stone Age, or the Bronze Age? Well, the correct answer is Old Stone Age. The Palaeolithic period is also known as the Old Stone Age, and it spanned from roughly 2 million years ago to 12,000 years ago. We began this lesson by talking about how food is an absolute necessity for our sustenance. Now, during this time, as in during the Palaeolithic period, humans did not grow crops. So, how did they gather their foods? For the purpose of categorization, these people were classified as hunter-gatherers. Now, what do this category hunter-gatherers mean? Firstly, these people relied upon hunting animals in order to gain food. So these people used to hunt different kinds of wild animals that used to live then, and they used to have these hunted animals as food. Along with that, these people also gathered food from trees. So this explains the fact why these people were called the hunter-gatherers. They gathered different kinds of forest produce like fruits, vegetables, honey, roots, shoots for their sustenance. Now a very important question stems from this. These were people who did not have access to technology like we do. So how did they manage to hunt those animals? Those were wild animals, and those could also attack these people. So how did the primitive humans hunt animals during the Paleolithic period? For this reason, they used tools. And these tools were made of different kinds of things like stone, wood, and bones. The very fact that stone tools were invented around this period explains why this is also known as the Paleolithic period or the Old Stone Age. And then these people also lived near sources of water. This now brings us to a very important point. Without food, human beings or any life cannot survive. But there is another thing that is very crucial for our sustenance as well. That is water. Can you live even for a day without water? I don't think so. You'll be dehydrated almost to a point of falling sick. And if someone does not take water for a long period of time, that person will die. So water is also very, very crucial for human or any kind of life's sustenance. And for this reason, people during the Paleolithic period used to live near sources of water from where they could gather water for drinking purposes. A point that we have been harping on all along is that during the Old Stone Age, primitive humans used to make stone tools. Now these stone tools were very, very essential to these people, and these stone tools were not just crucial to the primitive people alone, but this was essential to the entire humankind as well. Now these stone tools were required by these people to hunt animals, as we have already discussed. So these stone tools were attached to bones or wood, and in turn these made weapons like spears and arrows that these people required for hunting. So this illustration shows you some of the primitive tools that have been used by primitive humans for the purposes of hunting. Now I'm very sure most of you are very fond of traveling. We travel to different places for the purpose of enjoyment. We go to places for touring purposes. Along with that, many people migrate from rural to urban spaces in search of jobs or for educational purposes. We also travel to different places to meet our friends and relatives who do not stay close to us. Now, while we travel and move from one region or one place to another, we have to keep in mind that more often than not, we do it very consciously. We do it voluntarily and willingly. But this was not the case for the primitive humans, because they were compelled to move from one place to another. They did not live in houses like you and I do. Instead, they had to move from one place to another constantly over time. Now from this, the question that arises is that why did these hunter-gatherers had to travel from one place to another? This now brings us to a host of reasons why these people had to move from one place to another. Firstly, these people had to travel in search of food. Now we talked about how the primitive people did not grow crops. They instead relied upon hunting and gathering their food. Now if these hunter-gatherers stayed in one place for too long, chances were that they would have depleted all the resources that were available there. That is to say, they would have used all the forest produce, they would have killed all the animals that lived there, and as a result of this, they would face shortage of food. So in order to gather food and not suffer from scarcity of food, these people had to travel from one place to another. Along with that, these people also had to take into account the movement of animals. We have already learnt about how the hunter-gatherers hunted animals. Now animals also move from one place to another in search of food. In case of animals like deer or wild cattle, they move from one place to another in search of grasses. And these people also had to follow these animals in order to hunt and kill them. So, since the animals move from one place to another, the human beings were also compelled to follow their movements. So this is another reason why people had to move from one place to another. Now what did these people do after following the animals? They obviously hunted them for their own food. Now in order to hunt these animals, the primitive human beings required tools. We have already learnt about how stone tools were being made in the Palaeolithic period for the purposes of hunting. Now, for the making of these stone tools, good quality stone was required. So the search of good quality stones also had the primitive human beings travel from one place to another. Now we also have to discuss about the aspect of gathering food. These people relied upon gathering different kinds of forest produce. Now trees bear fruits in particular seasons. Suppose the primitive human beings are staying in region A, and the trees that are growing in region A bear fruits in summer. And after summer is gone, people will not get fruits there, which is why they will now be compelled to move to some other place where trees will be growing fruits. That is to say, the seasonal availability of fruits also compelled the primitive human beings during the Palaeolithic period to move from one place to another. And last but not the least, this shift of people from one place to another was also because of the search of water. Now all this while, the different kinds of reasons that we have been tracing why these primitive people had to move were all pertaining to food. Now we have learned that along with food, water is also required for sustenance. So these people also had to move from one place to another in search of water. They had to live near the sources of water in order to get water for drinking purposes. Now when we talk about the sources of water, we must keep in mind the two sources of water, which are the perennial sources and the non-perennial sources. Perennial sources are those sources of water that provide water throughout the year. And on the other hand, non-perennial sources of water provide water only during the monsoon. And people who lived near the non-perennial sources of water had to move to other places when it was not monsoon, because the non-perennial sources of water dry up during the summers. So people don't get water from non-perennial sources of water during the hot summers. So these perennial and non-perennial sources of water also helped these people to get food. How is it so? Because these sources of water like rivers and lakes are also home to many fish. And these fish were also used as food by the primitive people. So can you understand how so many reasons together contributed to this movement of people from one place to another? This also justifies the point that these hunter-gatherers lived nomadic lives. They moved from one place to another, and all this while we have traced quite a few reasons why these people had to move. Another very important thing that we require for our sustenance is shelter. Now, do you think these primitive human beings lived in proper houses like you and I do? Most definitely not. Thousands and millions of years ago, proper houses did not exist. But does that mean these people lived in the open air? They lived under the sky itself, or did they have some kind of shelter? They lived in caves, which were natural shelters. Now, while we talk about the lives of the primitive human beings in caves, we should ask certain questions. How did these people live in these caves? Because these caves must have been very, very cold. And caves do not have proper windows and doors like our houses do. So, how did these people survive during the cold winters? This now brings us to a very important discussion. And the discussion that we will now be focusing on is fire. Now, fire is considered to be one of the greatest discoveries of humankind. Let me give you an example in this regard so that you can understand the importance of fire in our daily lives. Suppose you have gone on a tour to a beautiful place called Kashmir in India during the winter. Now, it's very, very cold there. You get into your hotel room and you see logs are burning in the fireplace. And the fire that is burning there is providing you warmth. It is making your room very comfortable. Now it's snowing outside. It's very cold outside and you want to have a steaming cup of coffee. So you go down to the restaurant of your hotel and ask for a cup of coffee. You are expecting to get a steaming mug of coffee when someone from the restaurant tells you that fire is no longer available. Now you are eagerly waiting for that steaming mug of coffee when someone from the restaurant comes and tells you that fire cannot be lighted any longer. How will you feel? Now it is not possible to survive without fire. We require fire to cook food. We require fire to heat water and different kinds of things. We need fire to keep our houses warm during the winters. Fire is also required to make different kinds of metals. And on goes this list. We cannot enumerate where and how fire is required because it is required almost everywhere. And for this reason, it is considered to be one of the greatest discoveries of humankind. Now, the question that arises in this regard is that how was fire invented? It cannot happen that out of nowhere fire was invented. Let us now get into discussing the discovery of fire. Now, this extreme important discovery that almost changed the face of humankind might have been accidental. It might have been unwilling. How was fire discovered? Archaeologists believe that primitive humans might have rubbed two flintstones together, as a result of which a spark was produced. And when the spark fell on dry leaves, flame was lit. So this is the crucial and the breakthrough discovery of fire that changed the humankind as well. Now, primitive people realized that fire could be very, very essential to scare away wild animals. They also used this fire for different purposes. Now, when they used to hunt animals, once they saw that when a piece of meat fell in the fire and it was cooked, this piece of meat tasted well. This can be considered the birth of the process of cooking. Now, we are at an end of our discussion on Palaeolithic period. What did we learn here? Firstly, we learned how people were hunter-gatherers at this point of time. The Palaeolithic period extended from roughly 2 million years ago to 12,000 years ago. And during this time, People used to hunt animals. They also used to gather different kinds of forest produce. Along with that, people used stone tools. These stone tools were being made in the Palaeolithic period, which is why this period is also known as the Old Stone Age. And it is during this period that the use of stone tools helped people in the purpose of hunting. Now, people also lived in natural shelters during this time. This was not a time when people lived in proper houses. They lived in caves. And then came the breakthrough discovery of fire. The discovery of fire helped not just the ancient human beings, but the entire humankind at large. Now, a very important question that must be coming to your mind is that how do we get to know so much about these people who lived millions of years ago? In a subsequent lesson, we will try to find out the different sources that provide us information on the lives of human beings during the Paleolithic period. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.